Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is another edition of Fresh Red Kills. So Fresh Red Kills are the videos where I talk about the books I have recently finished reading. And as I said in my last video, which I've just finished recording, recent is a relative term. I read all of these in the last part of September. So here I am filming on November 2nd, so it's been over a month since I read these. You can tell by the t-shirt, I'm still kind of celebrating spooky season. I'm making it last as long as I can, and you can see I do have some books that are appropriate for it, so that's my excuse. So I'm going to be talking about Unbelievers, Spook, and Fright favorites. So I'll start with this one. And by the way, if you're new to my channel, excuse me, my videos are very informal. They are unscripted, and I don't really consider these reviews, just discussions. So what we have here is Alec, Ryrie. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I have no idea. Apologies if I'm not. Unbelievers, An Emotional History of Doubt. Now, I guess I didn't realize that I was kind of reading a quarter 3 book for Historathon when I decided to pick this up, just because I just wanted to get to it. But it does. It deals with the late medieval era and the early modern era. And it's about, as you can tell, it's about, a certain type of atheism or agnosticism. What essentially the author is doing, he's saying that usually the overall narrative of the spread of secularism goes that during the Middle Ages, people were incredibly devout, and then you sort of had Enlightenment come in, and these, secular and, these kind of Enlightenment philosophers that gave people the means or tools or rationale for moving away from religion. And then that sort of spreads from there. And what he's saying is that's not really how this worked or how this happened. Instead, it's called an emotional history. He's saying that the doubt that people faced or that they experienced in their religious beliefs or in their religious journey, it was more intrinsic, it was more emotional, and it predated the Enlightenment. So he's looking at things like the late Middle Ages and the ways that doubt presented itself. And he's saying that that kind of Enlightenment philosophy that would lead to secularization, that didn't come out of nowhere. It was built upon the doubt from the late Middle Ages, and especially through things like the Protestant Reformation. That Protestantism and the different competing forms of Protestantism, they helped to basically exacerbate this doubt, this growing unbelief that would end up kind of more solidifying itself in the Enlightenment. So that's what he's trying to correct in those terms. The author himself, he's not an unbeliever, but he does say that he often has more respect for the arguments of unbelievers than of fellow believers. And I think that kind of comes off in this as well. But he is overall pretty balanced. And I think he does a good job with it. A few things that were valuable to me in the discussion. He shows that doubt was actually very, very common in things like the late Middle Ages. That people understood that, you can kind of blaspheme in acceptable ways. Like if you were at a tavern and, you lost at gambling, it was not uncommon for people to yell a blasphemy, and they wouldn't be dragged out and burned at the stake or anything like that. It was just kind of accepted. Doubt was seen as a part of faith. What is faith if you don't have doubt? That doubt would be, it would end up reinforcing or strengthening your faith in the end. He said what they didn't tolerate was defiance. So doubt was okay, but you didn't defy God. You didn't defy the church, that sort of thing. So doubt was all right, not defiance. So he goes through, again, these sort of time periods. He goes through the Protestants. And I think that one of the things that's really interesting was he has an interesting thesis for why secularization maybe has grown over especially the past more than half a century, really since World War II, and that's key. He talks about the kind of pearl clutching that you might see from Christian conservatives, a fear that if we don't have a shared moral background, like for instance the Bible, that society wouldn't really know right from wrong. what he says is, and I think he has a pretty good argument, that World War II, and especially in particular the Nazis, kind of replaced that. That experience gave us stark lessons in inhumanity, in evil. That Hitler can become the short-term personification, analogous to evil itself. That there is no question, there's no debate that Nazis were evil, the Nazis were wicked. And essentially, like, what is blasphemy when compared to genocide? We saw such extreme evil that it was able to sort of create a common moral compass in Western society after World War II. And that kind of alleviated the need to have a biblical sort of narrative. We all had this shared narrative now from the war. But he also, expresses fears at the end, and this was published, let me see what year, 2019, that as living memory of the war fades, will the lessons of World War II start to, also fade and lose their potency? And I think that unfortunately we have seen in the past, especially year, that is true. And I think that he's right in his analysis of why secularism grew, and he's also right in his trepidation of what happens when people stop learning the lessons of that historical period. So yeah, I would recommend this. I really like this one. I followed it up with Spook. Science Tackles the Afterlife by Mary Roach. And a couple years ago, I had read her book Stiff, about, it was The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers, and that was entertaining. This one is also entertaining. This is one of those ones that I've had on my shelf for a long time, and I kept meaning to get to, and I finally did. Let me see, this was published 2005, so yeah, it's been a while. She is taking a scientific lens to people trying to prove or, find some evidence that life exists after we die. Whether that be in the hereafter, it could be reincarnation. Like, she starts off really looking at, Hinduism and in areas in the East with reincarnation and seeing them trying to scientifically prove it. Doesn't seem like they're very successful. And then she moves on to things like spiritualism and talking about the 19th century and, today, and, or people trying to weigh the soul at the moment of death. Basically spirit communication, ghost hunting, all those sorts of things. And, she's mixing history with a sort of like journalistic travel log, which I enjoy. And overall, I just found this really entertaining. I thought it got better and better as it went, especially when she starts getting into things like the mediums, the psychics, and the ghost hunting. Those are actually pretty entertaining chapters. And I don't know if I can say much more about it. I guess, I found myself reflected in this sort of thing quite a bit. I knew that I was an atheist, certainly by like high school, but I held on to my belief in ghosts a lot longer. I'm no longer really a believer in that because I don't think that the science has shown them to be true. But I wanted them to be true a lot longer than I wanted, like, for God to exist. So I found this sort of thing very interesting. This need to try and scientifically prove that there is something afterwards, that maybe ghosts exist. And I definitely, saw my younger self in this quite a bit. And then lastly, this was a quick read. This was like maybe an hour to read. This is Fright Favorites. You can see it's by Turner Classic Movies, published by them, and Horror Classics to Haunt Your Movie Night. And it's written by David J. Skal, a horror scholar who I really like and who unfortunately passed away maybe like 2 years ago or something in a car accident. But that's what I saw this in, like a five and below. It's a store, if you don't know, that has things that are usually $5 or less, and it was among those stacks, so I picked it up then. And when I saw it was David J. Skal, I definitely had to pick it up. And you can see we got nice big images and articles to go along with each of the movies. And this is really inspired by Halloween. not the franchise, I mean like the holiday. So that's kind of what he uses to determine which ones to talk about. It's not the ones that are most important in horror history. They're more ones that somehow relate to, like, you know, in his mind, a fun night of Halloween, that sort of thing. So, you know, some of the choices I might not have made, like Hocus Pocus being in here, I don't know if I would have chosen that one. But overall, I thought this was fun. Good, entertaining read for Halloween. So, yeah, that's it. That's what I read. There was The Unbelievers, which I would definitely recommend. There was Spook, which was a lot of fun, and Fright favorites. So, if you've read any of these, as always, love to hear your thoughts. And also, as always, thank you, BookTube.